Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan somewhere in the background, and this is a screenwriter's rant on Old Man, starring Stephen Lang, in kind of a cooped up in the cabin sort of thriller movie. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books, links in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's The Pineys, books 1 through 9, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Stephen Lang has sort of carved out a niche for himself. He was once in that cop show that took place in the 50s with Dennis Farina. I forget what it was called. I want to say Cop Story or Police Story or something like that. And I don't even think he's that old, right? But he's kind of carved out this niche in the movies where he plays. In this, he plays an old man, obviously. But in the other movie, he plays the blind guy who turns the tables on some people breaking into his house. And I think they had a sequel to that movie too. So he's a pretty good actor. He was good on that show too. If you haven't seen it, I forget what the hell was that called? Police Story, Crime Story, something like that. I'll read the synopsis here. When a lost hiker stumbles upon an erratic old man living in the woods, the two engage in a conversation that will reveal a terrifying secret. So it's very much like it's sort of built like a play. This is a kind of play you might say, right? Because it would all take place in the cabin, you know, and you'd have just the cabin, maybe a couple of rooms would be the set, and it would all take place there. So so this is one of these movies where it's very, very much about the characters and the past and the history. So, at first the guy passes himself off as a lost hitchhiker, but the old man is kind of wise to him, but he's also, I guess he's kind of losing his mind, so he doesn't quite have it all together. Written by Joel Veitch and directed by Lucky McKee. Lucky McKee. What a name, Lucky McKee. You got to remember that. Hey, Lucky. Hey, it's Lucky McKee. He directed a movie. So Joel Veitch is also one of the executive producers, along with, I'm going to guess, his brother Jay. Not an insane amount of executive producers, but a few. And who else? So it stars Mark Center with Lana Wright Mark and Patch Darga and Stephen Lang. So Mark Center, I assume, is the hitchhiker, and then the two women in it, I don't know if they're just in the flashback or whatever. Do we have a date on this movie? No, don't have a date on it, I don't think. No, it says September 8th, but that's today. So, yeah, I mean, this is the sort of movie it's going to have really good writing, right? It's going to have a kind of deep lore that really is all about the characters and, revelations. Like at first they're total strangers kind of thing, but then you realize, oh no, my father told me about you. And then it's like, well, maybe the old man knew the father kind of thing, and really this is about some sort of revenge, perhaps. The hiker's trying to get on the old man because maybe the old man screwed over his father or killed him, and now he's here to repay the debt. Or the old man's crazy, and he's going to kill him. And then there's brief glimpses of women in this. I don't know if they're actually in the movie or if they're just characters in like flashbacks. But there's definitely going to be a lot of acting. And look, I think Stephen Lang is up for it. I think he's a pretty good actor. He seems to really go the extra mile. Now, I'm not familiar with this other actor, but he seems all right. Not sure the time period. This could really take place at any time. They might move this like into the 80s, so there's no smartphones, because it's a bit classic the way they're sort of setting it up, because obviously he's in his long johns, And then if this guy doesn't have a cell phone, no one's going to find him out here. So the only reason I say it too is the style of his jacket kind of reminds me of, it gives me kind of an 80s vibe, late 70s maybe even. So I'm not seeing anything else that really determines the era of the technology. So not seeing any TVs or anything in the background. That would be another big giveaway, right? If it was a big tube TV or it was a flat TV or computer of some kind. But he's some kind of hermit. So, and the shotgun is certainly a very old weapon. You know, it looks pretty classic. So it doesn't look super high tech. So I'm guessing maybe this takes place in the past for that very reason. So there's no, you know, it wouldn't be easy for him to call for help or whatever. You got sort of this washed out room. Again, this is very much like a play. I wonder if it was a play. Back in the day, there was a lot of writers, screenwriters who would be hired because they did a lot of plays, you know. But it would show within their screenplays because then they would be, you know, they wouldn't take full advantage of the medium, let's say, you know, even though they might have the budget. Like this is obviously, I think it's probably a low budget movie because it does, I'm not seeing any place outside the cabin really, but it's a locked in the elevator concept, right? Now, screenwriters, those of you still writing screenplays, this is the kind of thing that low budget production companies are looking for, right? You set up a set like this, you know, whether it's in a soundstage or an actual cabin, there's so many advantages to it. Number one, you know, you have the equipment on set. You don't have to move the lights too much, if at all, once you get them set up. So you could just lock the place up, come back the next day, do more shooting. It's very efficient that way, right? So even if this is a sound stage, and it could be, they could, you know, build a cabin, most of a cabin in the sound stage, set decorated, and just, it might be more efficient to do it that way than, say, go to a real cabin. See, if you go to a real cabin, you're limited by the size of the cabin. When you have a soundstage, you're not limited, right? So you might have a room in the cabin, but you could actually place the camera way outside of it and then zoom in, you know, and it gives you different angles and perspectives, and you don't have to worry about bumping into the props or anything. It can be very tight if you're shooting in an actual cabin for this kind of thing, because cabins tend to be kind of small. Plus there's the electricity issue. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you know, the cabin may not have great electricity, and you may have a lot of lights that are sucking up the juice. Not to mention the cameras these days that people use to shoot on. They tend to be highly electronic devices. So it may be better off. You may be doing yourself a favor by shooting in a soundstage, even though you had to pay for the rental fee, and you might get the cabin for nothing or next to nothing, right? But just some things to consider. Perhaps I will do a screenwriting tips video on locations. Finally, something new I haven't done a screenwriter tips on. All right, so in a movie like this, first act, the old man, he's living by himself. He's out in the middle of nowhere. It's probably a montage of how he lives his life, and it's very lonely and isolating. And I think they hint that he's already crazy, or maybe has some sort of issues, right? Maybe he has nightmares, or PTSD or something. Then the hitchhiker shows up, and at first he's like, "Oh, I'm just lost. I just need your help." And he points a shotgun at his face and drags him inside and says, "Yeah, you sit here. I'll blow your head off." And starts yelling at him, and eventually he gets him calmed down enough that they start to have a conversation. Now, the turning point into Act 2 would be something like he asks him to stay or insists that he stay. Or maybe he puts the gun away, convinced that the hitchhiker means him no harm, or he at least, you know, stops threatening him. So they start to become friends, and they have a chat. It looks like they do some drinking, and maybe they drink coffee too. And things get a little out of hand. He's lost. He's in the middle of the woods. So maybe the old guy lets him spend the night. And looks like at one point somebody gets drugged. I think it's the hitchhiker, but it might be the old man. And then at some point the hitchhiker ends up tied to a chair. So the old man might be off his nut. So let's say he drugs him. Next morning he wakes up, he's tied to the chair, and then the old man's like, I knew it, you're out here to kill me, or something like that. But this movie reminds me a little bit of Closet Land, if you've ever seen that with Alan Rickman, which is a really good film. So then the third act's going to be the big reveal, right? During the course of the second act, it's probably about status changes. At first, the old man has the upper hand, but then at some point in the second act, at least from an emotional standpoint, the hitchhiker has the upper hand. The hitchhiker maybe confronts him with some information, or, calls him out on hypocrisy or whatever in his past, and they're going back and forth. And then he ends up tied to the chair. Probably not part of the third act, but you never know. At some point, it looks like the hitchhiker gets a hold of the shotgun, so then turns the tables on the old man. Maybe he shoots him at the end, or maybe he doesn't, or maybe that's just part of the wind up to it. And then finally at the end, I'm not sure what happens. I mean, it could go a lot of different ways. Maybe they kill each other. Maybe the old man kills him. He kills the old man. I'm not sure the women figure into it because you only catch glimpses of them. I'm going to guess they're probably part of some flashback of the women who used to be there. Maybe the old man in his younger days had a wife or a girlfriend or something. Not sure. But it's some sort of, again, it's like a play. So it's all going to be verbal. It's all going to be emotional. It's all going to be acting. And a lot of it rides on the actors. So, and definitely a lot of it relies on the writing. So, yeah, you're going to have to, you can't rest on your laurels on a movie like this. You can't hope that the sci-fi elements or the special effects are going to pull your butt out of the fire here. They're just not. Unless this is like super compelling all the way through, people are just going to get bored. Oh, God, they don't leave the cabin. It's really easy to get bored in a movie like this if it doesn't just keep moving forward, and have really good, shocking revelations. So it'll be interesting to see. I would definitely check out the reviews before I watched it, because it's hard to tell based on this. But I do like Stephen Lang. I think he's a decent actor. I think it could be good. If I saw it on Netflix or HBO Max, I think I might try it out. Yeah, I mean, especially if I heard it was pretty decent. The only way I wouldn't is if I heard it sucked. I'm getting a lot of feedback from some of the movies I've looked at the past in terms of the trailers, and sometimes people just write in, "Oh man, the ending of this sucked. Oh God, I can't think of the name of the movie, but it has Ed Harris in it, and the setup looked amazing. The setup was something about this guy is married to a woman, and the woman was, I'm really going off the track here, but the woman was bad for him, and so Ed Harris, as the father, suggests that his son take her out in the boat and kill her. But instead of doing that, apparently he doesn't do that, and they end up on the island. It sounds stupid. It sounds really stupid. They end up stranding themselves on the island. He ends up winning her back. I think it would have been much more interesting if he murdered her, but that's just me. This could go, again, it could go either way. I mean, it might be a bunch of BS, or it might be like a compelling character study of two men locked in a cabin, locked in this intellectual back and forth, or emotional back and forth, until finally one of them ends it. Or maybe they both go their separate ways. You don't know. Anyhow, I would check this out. I think definitely on a maybe wouldn't go to the theaters for it, but I definitely would probably check it out on like a streaming service. So, Old Man, starring Stephen Lang, thriller movie. I'm not sure the date on this. I don't think we got a release date on it. Probably soon. This feels like a fall movie. And that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Joan. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more base takes. Thanks for coming out to the Hamilton Library today. Had a great talk on how to hunt the Jersey Devil. So I hope you're checking out all the books, those of you who showed up. Yeah, the library thing's doing well for me. It's nice. Oh, and a reporter came from the Hamilton Gazette, so look for that. And Joan and I will see you tomorrow.